Alrighty, folks, it is currently 1:10 a.m. at the time of recording this. How's it going, everybody? Thank you all so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here on WardyNYM. I'd first like to emphasize that, yes, this is not my normal setup. That's why the graphics don't look as great as usual. That's why the audio doesn't sound as great as usual, and that's why the visuals don't look as great as usual. Again, I'm still on my trip with the best YouTubers that you guys could possibly imagine, as we've been playing some games basically against pro baseball players, and we have our final game tomorrow against the Salem Disco Turkeys here in North Carolina. So make sure to check it out, all the content. Check it out. Of course, your name tree is going to have vlogs. Draft Nick Mark's going to have vlogs. Hype, I'll have links eventually to him. I have on Twitter. Check out their vlogs. 5 Points Vids, Stark Raven Sports. All these guys are going to have vlogs out for actually doing these at-bats, and it's been a lot of fun. But that's been the positive of my day for sure and throughout the week, because unfortunately the Mets lose their game tonight in the series opener of a 4-game set against the Dodgers. We'll be deep diving again everything that there is to know about tonight's game. Why exactly did the Mets falter? Should we be concerned as Mets fans? And exactly what are we looking at for the remainder of the series here, folks? So first, everybody, first chiming in the live stream, thank you guys all so much for that. I really do appreciate it. Continue to smash that like and subscribe. I want to help us get 100 likes for the first short-term goal. Help us get to, of course, that means 16K subs for the next short-term goal here on WardyNYM. Also, another apology. Normally, I do series previews for shows, but given my current schedule and setup, as you can see, I just didn't get the time to do that for the Dodgers. Not like it mattered, if I'm being quite honest, because I probably would have talked about how much offense I expected in tonight's game, even with Tony Gonsolin having a 5-0 record with a 1.80 ERA entering tonight's game for the Dodgers. And no less, this was a pitching clinic for the Mets and the Dodgers, guys. And yes, it wasn't fun. And don't get me wrong, I'm not happy to be talking to you guys right now. I never want to talk after a Mets loss, especially deflating one where they just did not have it whatsoever. But let's talk about the factors. This is also the first game this year, guys, that the Mets have been shut out. They were the last team in all of baseball to not be shut out yet this year. It took their 53rd game of the season to finally not score a run in a game. And this was a game that was by all means winnable for the Mets, but they fell short thanks to some phenomenal pitching by the Dodgers and not just simply not enough hitting by the Mets tonight. And that's why, as you see in Wardy's top 5, we have no one else besides pitching highlights and Taijuan Walker, Holderman. Those are my only stars because there's no one else. When you look at what the Mets did tonight, folks, one, there are multiple factors, and I'm not going to be the one to blame excuses. Yes, they've been on a stretch. I get that. Yes, you could favor jet lag, especially going out west, but again, I'm not going to use that. The Dodgers haven't been playing great baseball. They just lost their series to the Pirates. The Dodgers have lost 5 of 6 games to the Pirates this year. They really are acting like the 2021 Mets, and that right? Actually, the Pirates beating them somehow, but you know it's a different vibe, especially against a top dog like the Mets, the Dodgers, the 2 best teams in the NL, and the 2 best offenses in all baseball too. So you expected some high pop in tonight's game, and we didn't get that. Taijuan Walker pitched beautifully, in my opinion. Colin Holderman got the job done. The pitchers overall did really strong for the Mets, and this was just a case of having no offense, and Francisco Lindor was definitely a factor. And what I mean by that is, guys, Francisco Lindor was a factor by not being a factor. He was not in the lineup. Lindor, probably the most LO Mets thing you could think of. And again, I know that narrative is done, so I'm not trying to drag that. But of course, Lindor, we find out from Buck right before the game that Lindor could be available as a DH, but probably not, as he got his fingers somehow, some way jammed in his hotel door. Lindor said before the game that he was jumping around for a while, like because of how much pain he was in. Not just like that's just the worst luck known to man. And I think that really, really hurt the Mets tonight because Lindor hasn't just been red hot, but he had 10 straight games with an RBI entering tonight's game. The lineup was mixed because at least Gourmet was in the 3 spot for Lindor at short. And Gourmet was one of the few bright spots for the Mets offensively tonight because he went 1 for 3 or so. But that's all she wrote. This Mets team just did not have it from the offensive side. I'm not concerned in the slightest. I would like to make that clear. This is definitely not a fun game to talk about. And guys, we're going to be live for tops a half hour. Again, for post-game shows like this, I know that one, there's a complete lack of viewership because a lot of you guys are not going to be watching this live. For people on replay, which I know will be the majority of you guys, thank you so much for being here as well. I do appreciate that. But staying up for a late West Coast game like this to fall short, to not even score a run, there really isn't much for either not just a casual fan or a diehard fan to want to take away from it. there were some positives just on the pitching front. But for the Mets, guys, I mean, what happened this one? It really was just the fifth and sixth inning. Throughout the first couple, the Mets were getting no hit through the first couple innings. Then they got their first hit, I believe, there in the fourth or the fifth, thanks to Luis Guillorme. And for the Dodgers, they got a couple base knocks, but Taijuan Walker worked out of some jams early, which was nice, especially there in the either was the bottom, the second, I want to, or maybe it was a third, where he first or third, I could be wrong, but he had runners on the corners with 2 outs and got out of the jam. Ty pitched very strong for the Mets. I do see some donations, guys. Like I said, I'll be addressing them soon. Thank you so much for that, as always. Tomorrow's another day, simply put, from people here in the chat. But Taijuan Walker was that one bright spot, along with Colin Holderman tonight. Pitched 5.2 of only giving up 7 hits, yes. 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, 94 pitches. And the first run came in tonight's game, guys, that we saw Mookie Betts' RBI single, and then the inning ended with the wackiest double play you could see. The Mets looked like that they had Mookie doubled up as Freddie Freeman was grounding out there to first, and Alonso looked like he was panicking. I'm not sure why he decided to make the move, but instead of trying to get Mookie as he was between first and second, they throw it on home, and then they have the guy there at third, and I'm blanking on who that was. Maybe it was Gavin Lux. I could be wrong, but they're trying to figure out exactly to get this guy out. They tag him. They say he's safe back at third. Then they review, and he was clearly out. And that ends the inning, thankfully, getting out of that one, only giving up a run. But then we get to the 6th inning, and Trey Turner leads things off with the double. And because of one Turner, you have the other Turner, that being the former New York Met, now turned New York Mets killer over the years, that being in Justin Turner, has himself what was awfully close to, a foot or so longer, like some fly balls that we saw from both teams tonight, being a home run. Starling Marte, unfortunately, did not have a great read on the play. Not going to harp on it too much, but Marte definitely would have been nice to see him make the snag there around the wall in the right field. He didn't hit off the wall, and that led, unfortunately, Trey Turner to score with ease. And that is how the Mets gave up their second and final run of the game. The only other run scored on this one. And again, in a nutshell, guys, my biggest takeaway from this game is a complete lack of offense. Tony Gonsolin has been dominant for the Dodgers all season long. He's been absolutely rolling. He is now 6-0 on the year with what was a 1.8 ERA. I'll double check his numbers here in a second, and I'll go through the Mets lineup. But Taijuan Walker, the pitching was strong. I mean, Ty really impressed me tonight, especially against the Dodgers team that is by anything but an easy task. And then we have the relievers too. Colin Holderman got himself in a jam there. He pitched 1.1 Swiss, and he had a jam, guys on first and second shortly after Ty was pulled from this one, I believe in the 7th inning, and he managed to get out of that jam without giving up any runs and 2 strikeouts. So there was one bright spot from the Mets game tonight other than Taijuan Walker. It has to be Colin Holderman. Holderman has continued to be a stud for the Mets. He's only given up 1 earned run, I believe, so far for them this year. Again, the Mets, after not giving up any earned runs the past 2 games against the Nationals, which they swept a second consecutive series, tonight they only give up 2. So it wasn't for a lack of pitching, which is awesome, because even with the Dodgers and having their injuries and Max Muncy, even though he's been struggling this year, and some others, this Mets team has been able early, that you can tell, to withstand what the Dodgers are showing. And again, this is a 4-game set. This is not easy. I said this time and time again, guys. 1.59 ERA is the lowest in NL. Again, huge kudos to Tony Gonsolin. Again, he's been pitching phenomenal ball. He's been blessing the skies a little bit for the Dodgers because he's been a long reliever for them in the past. And this year, he's really stood up when needed with the injuries that they've had in their rotation, especially. He's been balling out. And again, got to give credit where credit's due. I really don't have much gripes about this game other than the fact that the Mets just didn't have anyone. They didn't show up. Francisco Lindor out of this lineup definitely hurt them. I think that was quite obvious, right? There's no other way to put it. I think if Lindor is in the lineup tonight, this game is probably different in my humble opinion, because Lindor hasn't just been rolling, but he always has the elite defense. Not that Guillorme doesn't, because he surely does, but he's been just that RBI machine, and Lindor has been that guy to help get the Mets runs early, especially. So without Lindor, even against a great pitcher in Gonsolin that we saw tonight, I love the Mets' chances of getting some early runs earlier in this game. And again, just a lack of offense. They have themselves to blame. The Mets, however, are now 35 and 18 on the season. Still a great record. My goal for the Mets personally was that the Mets can be right around 500 or just above 500 throughout this entire West Coast trip. Then I will come out satisfied as a fan. Thankfully, because the Mets having such a cushion right now, They are in a great spot regarding the division, and that was so crucial heading into this West Coast trip. And for the people wondering, the Dodgers just got pistol whipped by the Pirates. How are the Dodgers shutting out the Mets? But you have to realize, guys, this is baseball at the end of the day. I get it that the Dodgers haven't played well against the Pirates, but one, they dealt with injuries. Two, a lot of teams tend to play lesser to lesser opponents, and the Mets have been one of those teams in recent years. We know that far too well. And three, it's the LA Dodgers. They, on paper, are the best team in baseball for a reason. You can never underestimate this club. I'm by no means surprised that the Mets found themselves losing, especially against Gonsolin, what he's done so far this year. I'm a little surprised by the lack of offense tonight as a whole. But again, these things are going to happen. The Mets are going to have their ebbs and flows of the season, just like any other ball club. And by all means, I'm not concerning them in the slightest. We'll see how game 2 goes tomorrow. That's going to be huge for them. This entire series is a 4-game set. Then you have the Padres, the Angels. This entire month is, again, anything but an easy task for the Amazons. But when you look at the Mets tonight, again, you could say that, okay, this was a jet lag thing. This was this was that. I'm not going to sit here and say that there was all these endless excuses. At the end of the day, they just didn't have it in game 1. And by all means, am I not really all that concerned? I think that this was a game that was definitely in reach. I think if you guys were watching the game, if you stayed up late the way that I did, then you could get a good grasp of what was transpiring. But by all means, this was a game that the Mets should have won and unfortunately just couldn't get enough offense. And again, tip of the cap to the Dodgers. I just want these games to be good more than anything, right? If the Mets are going to lose, I hope that the Mets lose in a valiant effort. And tonight, there wasn't a valiant effort on the offensive front. So I truly do hope and expect that to change starting in tomorrow's game. But guys, before I start to get to your donations, your comments, and concerns, like I said, we'll only be live. We'll be doing this show for a half hour. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying this post-game recap. I do appreciate it. There were some stolen bags that the Mets gave up early in this game. Of course, it didn't hurt them too much, thankfully. And the Mets, unfortunately, had some not great defensive plays that we saw. But all in all, this was a game that was all by all means within reach. They couldn't get there, and there just isn't too much to either harp on or really discuss, especially with the way that the Mets have been rolling this season. You can't just sit here and say, oh my goodness, this is really eye-opening as a Mets fan that the Mets are by no means a match for the Dodgers. No, that was the farthest thing from the truth. Dodgers fans will tell you the exact same thing. This was a close game, and they just had better pitching at the end of the day and a better overall offense. And I know that when you say it in those terms, that means like, wow, the Mets got completely dominated, but they didn't. Pitching-wise, they were pretty even. The only difference was, again, the Mets just couldn't get enough. They got no consecutive hits in this game whatsoever. They had no back-to-back hits at all in any inning in tonight's game. And you knew this game was done when Brandon Nimmo struck out for a whopping 3rd time. I don't have the number in front of me, but Brandon Nimmo, how many times has that man struck out 3 times? Not just throughout the season, but throughout his career. If that's going to happen with your leadoff hitter, with someone who's as elite as Brandon Nimmo is, even with the injuries that he's been dealing with as of late, he's still feeling healthier for the most part. You know that's a red flag, and you know that the Dodgers are having your number. And unfortunately for the Mets, that was just the case tonight. You know, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to going to bed for sure and forgetting about this loss, I should say. And unfortunately, the Mets are on Apple TV tomorrow, so that doesn't make anything better. Hopefully, I'll be able to watch that because, again, I'm not where I currently am residing for when I'm watching games and doing post-game shows here in North Carolina because I reside in PA usually. But regardless, going to do my best to watch tomorrow night's game. We'll be doing post-game for that as well. And more than anything, this is normally not a game, guys, that on the channel that I would cover. You're not going to see many people cover this game to begin with. Many other channels and many other podcasts will have very little things to say about a loss like this, especially when you're going to score a run. But one, I know a lot of you guys were waiting. I wasn't able to, unfortunately, talk about the Mets' most recent game, which was yesterday when they won the series finale. I also apologize if there's any lag that you saw on the show there. I saw it there for a second or whatever. But point is, again, this was a game. It is what it is. The Mets aren't going to win all of them. And by all means, if the Mets are going to lose 2-0 and end their 6-game winning streak, I much rather be it to the LA Dodgers than the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, I don't think that's even, up for debate, right? But let's get into, guys, the lineup real quick about the Mets and what stood out to me and really what didn't stand out, which was the majority of this team. Throughout the lats, Brandon Nimmo leadoff was over 4. They say he has 2 strikeouts. I could have sworn Nimmo had 3, so I'm not sure if that's just an error from Baseball Savant that I'm looking at or whatever. However, overall, Nimmo didn't have a good night. Starling Marte, another one 0 for 4 tonight. Looks like he got on base, but it was a nice snag there by Cody Bellinger after review halfway through the game or so, and that was an out for him. Luis Gourmet, one of the few bright spots offensively for the Mets in their 3-hit night, went 1 for 4 and a strikeout. Then going down the list further, guys, Pete Alonso had a bad day, 3 strikeouts, struck out at a fastball right down the pipe from Craig Kimbrel. I mean, Pete just has those days. He cannot handle velo, especially when he faced, I believe he went up against Brewstar Gratterall as well. Just didn't have it. It was either, yeah, I think it was him. But regardless, it was frustrating to see Alonso struggle, but I'm not all that surprised. He's not going to get a hit every night. And he still is batting 278, 874 OPS on the year. Jeremy's 356, 892. Marte 280, 759. Nemo 277, 796. Jeff McNeil went 1 for 2 today. McNeil was probably one of the best, if not the best offensive player, because he got on base multiple times for the Mets tonight. No other Mets batter got on base more than once other than Jeff McNeil. 1 for 2 with a base knock opposite field, as he always does, that I love to see, and not always pulling that ball down the first baseline. He also gets those oppo knocks and also a walk. Mark Cannon went 0 for 3 that we saw there. Not a great night. No strikeouts. So Eduardo Escobar for 3. And going down the list a little bit further here, JD Davis 1 for 3, and he had himself a double. So JD, you can actually give kudos. I forgot about JD's double for a minute. So yeah, he would probably give, the offensive guy of the day, but I couldn't justify having anyone in my awardees top 5 like I normally do, because there was just a complete lack of effort and a lack of interest that I felt with this offense. Again, great pitching by the Dodgers cannot, undermine that in the slightest, but the Mets offensively, regardless, just had nothing tonight, universally. Patty Mazzee 0-3 tonight with a strikeout. JD had 2 strikeouts as well. And then when you go down the list, you had Taijuan Walker, Colin Holderman, Chase, and Shreve had a scoreless inning, which I think was huge there in the 8th, because Shreve has definitely struggled in recent outings. So to have scoreless there and only giving up a walk in the 8th against a Dodgers team that, again, is the LA Dodgers at the end of the day, I will take that. I will definitely take that as a positive. But from the Dodgers, again, Tony Gonsolin, 6 scoreless, only gave up 2 hits, 1 walk, 5 strike, now 1.59 year round the year. That's nasty. I mean, Gratterall, Hudson, Kimbrel were the relievers to end things, there for the Dodgers. And yeah, just a rough game. Just really a rough game in the sense that they did not have enough going. But to say I'm concerned would be the farthest thing from the truth. I just know that this Mets team, they definitely need to get back on the right foot, and they definitely need Francisco Lindor back in the lineup. Losing him, my goodness gracious. You even had Steve Cohen tweeting out, that how ironic that Lindor got hurt from a door. Lindor, yeah. What a dad joke, I know, from the top rope, as I said on Twitter as a joke regarding that. But really not too much more that I think needs to be said, guys. I'm breaking down this game. Just didn't have it. Not the best defense. Surely not the best offense. Really strong pitching, and it sucks when the Mets managed to only give up 2 earned runs to the best offense in baseball when it comes to runs scored. In case you guys don't know, let's break down the numbers here quickly, and then I'll wrap things up for people on replay. I'll crop things, but then for people here in the live stream, which is all you guys watching right now as I speak, I'll be answering all your comments, questions, and concerns for the next, I'd say, 15, tops 20 minutes. Like I said, not a long show tonight. I'm exhausted. Got a long day tomorrow. And again, we'll be up late for more Mets baseball for the next, 9 games. So it's going to be a stretch. But entering tonight's game between the Mets and the Dodgers, folks, the Dodgers were first in runs scored and the Mets were second. Hits, the Dodgers were 5th. The Mets were first. The Mets only had 3 hits tonight. So to put things into context there. On base percentage, Mets first. Dodgers second. Slugging, Mets second. So for people that think that the Mets don't have a lot of pop in their lineup, the slugging has been killing it. Again, the Mets have been averaging like 7 to 8 runs per game. What's felt like at least the past week and a half to 2 weeks of baseball that they play now. So it shows you the difference again when you go out west and you're playing a Dodgers team that has the best team ERA in all of baseball. I mean, they're just ridiculous. Lowest walk rate in baseball too. First in slugging was the Dodgers, and OPS, Dodgers were first to the Mets second. So again, a series that on paper has all the workings of being a fantastic offensive clinic, but that just wasn't the case tonight. So I'm proud of the pitching for the Mets. Really sucks though that again in a 4-game stretch against these Dodgers, you can't get even at least muster a run to make things interesting to help tie. Taijuan Walker has definitely been a blessing. He has been a strikeout machine this year, but you can tell the quality has been better. His splitter has been phenomenal. That has led to great success on his front, and that's something that the Mets desperately need without both Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and yes, that also, and Tyler McGill, who's itching his way back. He should hopefully be back, I would say, sometime in this West Coast trip. Knock on wood. Hopefully we'll see him soon, but definitely is a guy to keep an eye on that we can expect in this rotation once he gets rehab start, hopefully within the coming days, and then we go from there. But for guys, everyone, again, not a terrible loss at all. It sucks when you stay up on the East Coast and you don't get to see them at least muster a run and make things interesting. But this is baseball. This is game 53 and 162. I expect losses to be far worse than this. And even the Mets have a magical run and say they're on pace right now to still win 100 plus games this year. even then, you still have to lose 60, to 70 games if you're in the 90 range. The Mets are going to lose a lot of games this year. I'd much rather that they lose a game, a close one to the Dodgers, in a fashion where by no means did it ever feel like the Dodgers are dominating the Mets on the overall game. Did they dominate them pitching wise? Yes, I think that's rightfully you can say and justified. But overall in the game, no. This was definitely a game within reach, and unfortunately for them in game one, they just fell short. But for everyone here in the live stream, I'm going to start answering all your comments, questions, and concerns. I also would like to thank everyone a lot, too, because everyone, no one, at least in the live stream, is acting like the sky's falling. That's nice, because normally when I do these shows, which I try to, I don't want to do them for losses, but I most certainly will, because we're Mr. Consistent here on WardyNYM, the largest Mets platform on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY. But my point is that this is a Mets team where when they lose, even if it's in a loss that, they played and battled really well, you guys tend to really act bad. So I will say that I do appreciate how the chat looks. But again, I'm going to answer your comments now, folks. For people, however, on replay, which is not you guys on the live stream, this is where I'll be cutting things off. So please let me know, guys. I know most of you guys are listening to this, watching this on replay. Thank you so much for that. Maybe you're watching or listening on your commute for work, whatever it may be now. Because again, it's a 1:30 a.m. here on the East Coast by the time I'm live now. Most of you guys are probably asleep at the moment that I'll be watching this after the fact. Let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about this Mets loss? Again, losing 2-0, not a loss I'm awfully concerned by at all. It definitely sucks to have the offense not contribute tonight, and it definitely sucks to waste what was great opportunity with some strong pitching on the Mets front against arguably the best offense, let alone the best team in baseball, and the LA Dodgers. Regardless, what was your biggest takeaway from the game? Let me know. And what is also your expectation for the remainder of the series, folks? Because as we take a brief look here before I cut things off, tomorrow we have Chris Bassett on the bump facing Tyler Anderson. And then for game 3, we have David Pearson versus Buehler before we get to game 4. So pitching matchups, Bassett, he's looking for another strong start, pitched well in his last one, and hopefully continues that trend of bouncing back off after that rough outing against the Giants 2 starts ago where he gave up 8 earned. Regardless, guys, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate it. Smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this consistent Mets content. Again, maybe not the most positive, but by all means, I'm not going to be the most pessimistic guy out here. That is for sure. And again, for people in the live stream, I'll start answering all your questions, comments, and concerns.